welcome. Come on up. And just really briefly tell us what your innovation is and what kind of impact it's made. Financials, numbers, traffic.
Sounds good. I have props, so I want to make sure I have my props ready
Okay,
here.
all right.
Well, I'm very excited to be here. Thank you very much, and it's great to have an international audience coming to Toronto. And as a magazine about Toronto, I'm excited to talk about our city and the stuff that we've done because our business has been based around building up Toronto.
Okay, before you go on, though, you got to answer that question.
Okay.
One innovation and the impact.
One innovation is merchandise. We have produced merchandise that was actually generated more money in our first 3 years than our advertising and subscriptions did combined.
Awesome.
All right.
Off you go.
Okay. So again, it's great to be here. As you can see, I have 4 ideas essentially about what has made us a unique magazine, and part of it has to do with my own personal experience of being in the publishing world. Before this, I'll give you just a brief history. We started spacing in 2003. I had worked for 5 years at the Hockey News, which is a seminal magazine here in Canada and also in the States around the sport of ice hockey. I was the art director of it. I went to journalism school, but when I went to journalism school, I wanted to write about hockey. I wanted to be a beat hockey reporter, and there was also 5 other people in my class that wanted to do that, and 5 other people the year ahead of me, and then 2 years ahead of me, and a year and 2 years behind me. So I realized I wasn't standing out. But one of the skills that I had was I knew how to use a Macintosh computer in the mid-90s, and I went to a high school for the arts. I was a visual arts major, and I had a graphic design background. So I kind of started carving out a niche for myself as someone who knew the journalism world well, but also knew design really well. And I ended up interning at the Hockey News for 2 years. And I ended up, when I graduated, I taught at the college that I went to, Humber College here in Toronto, for a year. And then the Hockey News hired me as the art director, and I was there for 5 years. I specialized in I did the layout, obviously, of the magazine, but I also ended up specializing in newsstand covers. And when the parent company, Transcontinental of the Hockey News, bought a sports annual publication called Preview Sports, so they fantasy pool, that type of stuff, they would publish one sports annual for, say, football, the NFL, and college football, but there would be 15 regional covers for the NFL, and 15 regional covers for college football, and 15 regional covers for baseball, and the NBA, and hockey. So I learned very quickly what worked and what didn't work on the newsstand. And then I had been working there for a while. I was the only one in the art department, and then after a couple of years, there were 3 or 4 of us, and then they wanted to sell the Hockey News. And so as the person that headed that department, I was an easy target to be laid off. And so I ended up going out on my own. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do after I was on my own. One of them was I wanted to do graphic design that had a meaning and a purpose and changed things. I loved hockey, but I didn't think I was changing the world very much when I was working there. And so, with a couple of friends, we started this magazine, which is called Spacing. We've been around for 12 years. I think we're considered one of the top small magazines in this country. Last year we were nominated for Magazine Brand of the Year by the National Magazine Awards, and we're up against 2 very large publications. We only put out 10,000 copies an issue. So I think what we've done is we've carved out a niche that is very unique in the Canadian media landscape, and we've done it with a couple of unique ways. So the first thing that I felt was unique was next. All right. So is our layout format. So we're, if you're in circulation and you specialize in newsstands, you probably don't like my magazine that much because we're landscape format. As you can see, that's what it looks like when it's spread out there. We did that simply because, as I say here, a magazine about the city needs to feel like the city. And while cities do grow upwards, they mostly spread out. Our format reflects this concept. And as someone that was a newsstand specialist, I understood the value of standing out on a newsstand, and what I also realized was that there is newsstand cover design have become way too formulaic. Certainly in the sports world, it was always about a big number in the top left-hand corner, make sure it circles in, and make sure you got exclusive and big numbers and all that kind of stuff. What I did with spacing was the exact opposite. I actually went against everything that I learned about working on the newsstand. And what ended up happening was that we were a unique magazine. Nothing existed like this in Toronto or Canada for that matter. So stores, knowing that our magazine would be covered by other magazines, put us in front. They put us on that top shelf on that front rack. We didn't have to pay for it, and we're right beside Toronto Life and right beside Harper's and all these other magazines. And our numbers, our newsstand numbers, as you can see in the bottom there, for the first 7 or 8 years, were around 90% sell-through on the newsstand, and we had 5 issues that what our distributor would say we were over 100%. We're at 125% on most of those. It meant that they reordered magazines from us to get on the newsstands. We're lucky that we were a quarterly, so it stays on the newsstands for a while. That helped our newsstand sales. But our format forced the people in stores to actually put us where you normally have to pay. And so this helped us, obviously in the Toronto market specifically, because there were outside of Toronto Life, there was no other city-oriented magazine. So these are four of our recent covers. Just kind of give you a quick idea. We use a mix of photography and illustration. We have more photos than I've actually showed here on our covers, but over the last little bit, we've been doing a lot more kind of concept in this. And what we do with our cover section, instead of having 5 or 6 large features, we have a cover section that is themed. So we will have a variety of features. Some of them might be big. We might have 2 or 3 big ones, but we may have 7 or 8 smaller ones around 1,000 words to 500 to 1,000 words. And so we theme it. So as you can see in the top left corner is the magazine that we currently have out. It's about the underground. Our spring issue, which is in the top right corner, is the sky issue. So you can see we even play with our themes throughout the year. There's a link between the sky and underground. When we have a city election, the bottom left corner is what we did, and I'm not sure if you can see it, but the things in the brain there are little different city issues that are important to Toronto. And as you might know, we had a very notorious mayor who did a lot of damage metaphorically and not physically, but existentially, certainly to our city. So we did a disaster issue. So it was about tornadoes and earthquakes and the CN Tower falling over and Rob Ford being reelected. So we have some fun with these issues. While we're a serious magazine, we also are willing to take the piss out of ourselves. Excuse the language. The kind of the second pillar in what we do is events. So every time that we put out an issue, we throw a party, and they will attract anywhere from 200 to 600 people at these events, depending on the time of the year, the venue, the topic, and so on. We've done 37 issues, and we've done 37 release parties to date. We also will do talks and lectures around the topics that we're talking about. So, with the sky issue, we took people to the U of T observatory, the University of Toronto's observatory, the old observatory, at least here in downtown. That used to be an observatory when there was no street lights and lamps. We've also done road trips, and I'll quickly show you that in the next one. We've done social events and film nights. So there's two happy fellows reading our magazine at a release party. The top right corner is the urbanism road trips. And so what we've done is we think Toronto's a great city, but it has a lot to learn from other cities. But we also complain a lot. I'm sure everyone in your, from wherever you are, in your own city, people complain about their own city. We're no different. So one way to make Torontonians feel good about their city is we took them to Detroit. And you know, it does sound kind of cynical to do, but what we did there is we actually, part of what prompted this is that there was an article in the Toronto Star about roaming dogs taking over a neighborhood in Detroit, and we knew quite well that's a real misconception of how dire Detroit is. It is a bit of a hole in America, but it is also has a lot of a great spirit, entrepreneurial, and it's rising again. Downtown is being reinvigorated. There's a lot of interesting urban farming. There's lots of interesting recycling programs that you just don't get. People are stepping up to replace the services that the city of Detroit offered. So we took people down there, and we've taken them down there 5 times so far, or 4 times so far. They sell out. We take 50 people in a bus, and they sell out within about 24 hours. And we have a waiting list of about 500 people that want to be on our trips. We also took people to Pittsburgh, which is kind of the answer to Detroit. It's only 5 hours away from Toronto. It's a Rust Belt city that figured out how it wanted to reinvent itself, unlike Detroit. Pittsburgh is very much a steel town, a manufacturing town that lost a lot of its jobs, and it's reinvented itself as a education hub around medical knowledge and research. And then they've done a lot of good stuff around culture. Richard Florida, as some of you may know, started his career there and his research there. So he's partly to blame or pat on the back for the reemergence of Pittsburgh. And right now we're, knock on wood, we're waiting on some funding, and hopefully we're going to be doing trips to Europe. In 2016, we're taking people to a handful of cities with this kind of in mind, but it's the opposite. It's actually to inspire our readers when they see the best practices of cities like Copenhagen or Stockholm or Berlin or those kind of places. So that's kind of the next kind of, I think, pillar in our business that we're working on. And if I was presenting this next year, hopefully that would be, I'd have a great success story to talk to you about. We also do things like film nights. We'll get a sponsor and rent a theater, and people will submit films to us, and we'll throw in events, and we'll have anywhere from 100 to 250 people, and we've done this on 5 occasions since we started. And then we do lo-fi stuff, social nights. We've done lawn bowling social nights. Lawn bowling clubs in Toronto are going to be closed because their constituents are getting old. And so what we tried to do was we tried to kind of, how would I say this, capture that kind of element of the population that is young and has some disposable income and has some free time, and they want to do something kind of old and quirky, slightly hipsterish, and lawn bowling, dressing up in all whites, and lawn bowling seems to be one of those things. And we've done 10 of those in the last 3 years, and it's great for us. We don't make any money off of it. People get a free copy of the magazine, but again, it engenders lots of goodwill from our readers. The next 2 things are related to one another. So merchandise. As I said, that's been our most innovative thing. So in a year after we launched the magazine, we created a series of 1-inch buttons. You can see the size of them. I'm wearing them on my lapel right now. And they replicate the tile design of every subway station in Toronto. So there's 73 stations altogether in Toronto, and so we have 73 buttons that look like the walls of that subway station when you come into it. Nobody really likes TTC, the transit system in the city, but they have a personal affinity towards their local station, where they live, where they work, where they grew up, where their boyfriend or girlfriend or partner is. And what we did is in the 11 years that they've been out, we've sold 500,000 of those. To give you an idea, that would be if you stack them 1 inch on top of each other, that's 3 times the size of the CN Tower. So like we've done a lot with these buttons. And as I said, in our first 3 years of our existence of our magazine, it outstripped our subscription and advertising sales, and it's what kept us alive for those very important first few years. And then we started adding other merchandise items that were very Toronto-centric. And I'll take one step back. We could have done buttons that said spacing on them. We could have done T-shirts with spacing on them, but I'm sure people would wear them and they'd like them, but we wouldn't sell 500,000 of them. What we did is we tapped into a very kind of small local civic pride element that has spread to the point now where we opened a retail store. We opened a retail store last year, which I'm going to talk about just in a second, but these are some of our other items. 4 of the 5 of these are transit-oriented. It's a really kind of, transit is a great theme for our city because it links us. It's kind of the blood of the city in a way, and there's an icon to all of these. So in the left-hand side, there's a thing called the rocket wheel, which holds 10 tokens. We're a very antiquated transit system, and we still use tokens. We bought this token holder from a man who owned the mold in Britain. We bought 5,000 of them, and we sold them out in 2 weeks. People were so hot for these. 3 years later, we still get requests for them, and they're not being manufactured anymore, so we sold out of them, but we still get requests for them because people like them that much. We approached TTC, so going down right below it, there's a thing which we call Metro Picks, because our monthly pass is called the Metro Pass, and they don't sell all of the passes each month. So what we did is we contacted the TTC and said, we asked them, does it cost you money to recycle these? And he said, yes. And I'm like, well, these unsold passes, just give them to us. We'll upcycle them. And what we do is we have a handheld guitar pick maker, and we make our own guitar picks. We sell the set of 15 for $5. It costs us nothing besides the minute it takes to punch out 15 of them from our staff, and it's a really easy thing to do when our store is not all that busy. And so it fits into exactly our model. We want to be sustainable. We want to support the city. All these things are kind of wrapped up into this one product. The middle product there is called Metro Magnets. This is something, if you know what magnetic poetry is, where you have a bunch of different words you put it on your fridge and you can make these really awkward, weird sentences and phrases. We've done that, but we've done that with pieces of a subway line, so you can make the craziest subway map on your fridge that you like. Interestingly enough, 50% of our sales have gone to the U.S., not Canada. It doesn't look anything. It's the style is not specific to any one city, so it's people are buying them all over the country and all over North America. And then probably one of the things that we're most successful at doing is what I call responsive merchandising. So in that bottom left or bottom right corner is a button that says Left Wing Pinko. So again, going back to our notorious mayor Rob Ford, when he got elected, kind of a wacky sports commentator named Don Cherry, he's a hockey guy, comes to the ceremony and puts the chain of office around the mayor's neck, and then somehow gives a speech for some reason. And he decided that he was going to rail against bike riding pinkos and left-wing pinkos. And I was listening to this online, and I was like, this is ridiculous. And so I designed a button, and we were selling it within an hour of him saying it online, and we sold 15,000 of those in 1 week. Every province in Canada, so there's 10 provinces, 3 territories, they were sent to, someone bought one from every one of those places, and 25 states. So, and then what was great is, like, instead of it just being like a pot shot at Don Cherry and Rob Ford, what we did is we donated some of the money from that to the Rose Cherry Hospice, Don Cherry's wife who had passed away from cancer. There's a hospice named after her, so we gave some money to that. So we try to do that, and right now we're selling these things called New Stock Canadian buttons, which is a response to our current Prime Minister, who made this kind of underhanded racist comments about old stock Canadians and what, and so we got those out really quick, and we've sold about 1,000 of those in the last week and a half or so, and then we're selling them at our retail store, which is what I'm going to talk about next. So in 2013, we had all this other merchandise kind of going besides our buttons. We're getting a nice kind of inventory of different products, and then people were coming to us and saying, "Can we sell products through your website?" And to the point where half of our office was storage of other people's merchandise. So we needed a new place, and I decided that I thought it would be a good idea to actually monetize our space. So in 2013, what we did is we did a pop-up shop in the entertainment district, which is just about a kilometer west of here. For the month of December, we sold Toronto-centric products, made about $50,000 in that month, which was way better than we would have done online. And we spent $500 on rent in that space. So we had a very good December 2013. And so that was kind of our initial market research into, should we do this? Should we go into a retail store? And we did. I looked around and I saw no other Canadian magazines had any kind of public, very accessible retail space. There's a magazine in St. John's, Newfoundland called Down Home, which I believe is an extension of the tourism department in Newfoundland, so I don't count them as a consumer magazine. They have a store, but we're the only true city store. And if I've been to numerous European cities, lots of American cities, and they all have a store that's based on the city, selling items about that city that are not tchotchkes. They're not a cheap gift shop. They're actually nicely designed stuff that's evocative of the city. If you walk around Toronto and you see a gift store, a souvenir store, it's most likely going to have a igloo or a Mountie or a beaver or a moose on it, and that has nothing to do with the city of Toronto. And that's actually our working motto: is no moose, no beavers. We don't have it up anywhere, but that's when we're buying stuff, that's what we're thinking of. We're not thinking about the cliche, we're thinking about the stuff that's genuine about our city and represents our city and does it in a good way. So in the year that we've been open so far, the annual revenue for I screwed up this slide here, sorry. The store has doubled spacing annual revenue, yeah, that's right, and has increased our subscriptions by 25%. So we've seen a significant jump in our subscribers because people are coming in and subscribing in the store. We've seen a market jump in our newsstand sales because bookstores are closing. We opened, and now we can sell our own stuff, and we actually sell it at a little bit less than the rest of the retailers do. Yet we're taking the entire cut, so it doesn't matter if we knock $1 off of our cover charge. And then we've also been able to do things like connect in-store sales to our editorial content. So we review books, and we make sure that at the end of that review, it says, you can buy this at the spacing store. We've done this with other items that is connected to our editorial content. And here's a quick screen grab of some of the stuff we offer. I'll just go from left to right on top row. That's our Metro Magnets. We offer postcards. We offer stationery. Again, all based on Toronto. Maps about our subway systems. We have books about the history of Toronto. We have mugs that have the Toronto streetcar, the new Toronto streetcar icon. We've done things like, we're very bike friendly. Outside of our store is a dedicated bike lane. So what we've done is we sell a carrier that you can put on the front of your bike that carries a 6-pack of beer. We also sell wine rack holders that hang off of your crossbar of your bike. Bottom left-hand corner is cufflinks of using our current tokens and old tokens as well. There's our subway buttons. We have neighborhood toques that a retailer makes, so I'm not going to put it on here. But Scarborough is a former city that's been absorbed into the city of Toronto. There's 40 different kinds of these. We're the only store that sells every single one, so it represents neighborhoods all across Toronto. That was our biggest seller in our store last year. I think at Christmas, we sold close to 1,500 of these toques in a 4-week period, and then we also offer books about architecture and planning and those types of things. What I feel like we've been able to do, and I'll tell you this, we have a staff of 4. There's me as the publisher, there is an advertising director, there's a retail director that also looks after subscriptions, and then an assistant art director that looks after production. After that, everyone is pretty much a freelancer, and as the publisher and creative director and the editor of the magazine, it all kind of funnels through. It all funnels through me. So this has been a passion of mine, but I've also, because it's an operation of 4 people, I've been able to do things without having to go through committees and ask permission. We just do it, and sometimes it doesn't involve research, and sometimes we fail, but most of the time we've been succeeding because we've been relying on our instincts of what we know about the city. There you go.
Up on a chair,
Yeah,
let's
sure.
chat. So, any questions? Right over there.
Matt, you clearly have a great design eye, and you've kind of tapped into these authentic,
Yes.
not just products but experiences. Have you considered perhaps making this something that you take these products and you have licensing agreements with other retailers so that the distribution becomes beyond just a spacing product?
Our buttons are sold in 15 other stores across Toronto. Our buttons and the products that we create ourselves are sold in other stores in the city. We also, because we're focusing on Toronto here, or I want to focus on Toronto, I didn't mention that we also do magnets and buttons of the Montreal transit system and the Edmonton transit system. So we've expanded outwards into we have a website that covers Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, and Halifax. I had to do that geographically across the country to remember. So we've been scaling this. Right now, our retail store is Toronto. We want to focus on Toronto. We have nothing to compare it to, like year to year, since we only opened in November last year. So it's going to be our first year figuring out how we run this store, and then the next step for us would be to figure out if we can. Is it scalable? Can we take this to Vancouver? Can we take this to Ottawa? Can we take it to other cities? Maybe we might do smaller versions of this store in Toronto. Instead of it being a city store, maybe we're doing small neighborhood stores. So we're looking at different ways of kind of scaling this outwards. We try to do things in a very kind of moderate way. Where I'd love to be huge and big, but we just don't. We don't have the capacity to do that. So unless someone wants to buy us and spend a lot of money on us, I'd be happy for that. But I don't think anyone does at the moment. So I like going it at this kind of like nice gradual pace right now.
Okay, some other questions right there.
Hi. Have you integrated any of your advertisers' products into your store, or have you kept it distinct?
No, there's a lot of crossover. So what we've seen this year is it's mostly been around book publishers right now, but they'll buy an ad in the magazine, they'll buy a placement in the store, and they might even buy a window. We have 5 bay windows. We're a very lucky store. We're not one of those thin 20-foot frontage and goes deep. We're thin on the side, and we have a very wide frontage. So we have 5 bay windows. So one of those windows is almost always sold for us for about a month. So we have been able to do that.
You haven't talked about the journalism. What is your journalistic formula? I mean, I picked up perhaps you're very left wing, but are you left wing today because of what's been happening in the city, or are you a hard hitting kind of content? Let's make the city work and
Sure.
exploit corruption. What is the formula?
So we're not hard left wing at all. I find we're very kind of moderate and centrist in our approach. I think the closer you get to politics at home, so at the civic level, I believe the politics get more progressive. Even if you're a right winger, you still want your garbage picked up. You still want clean air and those types of things. So we tend to have a variety of opinions, though I would say we're a center-left politics of our magazine. But what we're about discovering the city. We are critical of the city, but I also felt like So when we started the magazine, we found that people were writing about transit in the silo about transit. It was about news. There was no analysis, no pullback, big picture of what was going on around transit in the city. And so what we tried to do was give that perspective. We wanted to provide an umbrella for a whole bunch of issues that were related, because transit you just can't talk about. If you want transit to succeed in a city, you can't talk about it in isolation. What makes transit work is density. I mean, it's about traffic and congestion. It's about the design of your street, so that's urban design. It's about walkability, so that you can walk from your house to that subway station or to that bus stop. So what we tried to do was bring these things all together and provide what I think is it was a unique take on how to cover city issues. I don't think anyone was necessarily doing that. The only people that were covering transit and the waterfront and parks and congestion, it was all newspapers, so it's all news. So unless they spend the money on good, smart pieces on those Sunday weekend editions, it wasn't happening. So we filled that. We tried to fill that void, and we tried to be a magazine about life in the public realm. It wasn't about restaurant reviews. It wasn't about shopping malls. It was about being out in the streets. And what your life was, you're experiencing it. So when I go to London, I spend most of my time out in public, and that's how I get to learn and get a feel for the city. And that's what we wanted to do with this magazine. We wanted to talk about how the city was changing and kind of give a voice to people that were really interested in talking about the city that necessarily weren't professionals. So they weren't developers, or they weren't just urban planners. There are people that, what I call the urban curious. They really liked their city. They wanted to learn a little bit about its history. They wanted to know why that garbage can is so poorly designed and so on. So that was kind of our take on it. And I think that's what's happened in the Toronto media landscape, is that we kind of paved a way of how to cover the city issues in a bit of a different way. And you can, I know this sounds so pedantic and boring, but we talked a lot about garbage can design, because we had the most horrible garbage cans here for the longest time. They had ads on them, and they were designed so that the ads looked good, but didn't really function very well as a garbage can. And it just blew our mind, because they're also trying to ban posters. They're trying to stop people putting posters up on lampposts, but they're allowing advertising on garbage cans. We saw this as a certain hypocrisy at the civic level. So we tried to show that this was interesting, and we proved that it was actually an interesting topic and people cared about it.
Great. Questions over here? Right back there.
A, when are you running for mayor? And B, no. Can you talk a little bit about some of the more lucrative ad client integrations that you've been able to pull off? Like, has there been banks? Has there?
I think you're stumping me here. So, ad integration. So this is where I've tried to be independent, and as much as I can is developing stuff where we make the money and not asking someone else for the money. So it's a hard thing to do, and it takes some man hours, but we're decent at it now. I think maybe the one thing that was good, we did a roadshow. So when we do a national, once a year national edition of our magazine. It brings together the stuff we've written on all of our websites, all of our blogs across the country, and we put that into a national edition of the magazine. So when we launched that national edition, I drove across the country twice. I drove out to Victoria, and then back here to Toronto, and then Halifax. If you're not from here, that's about, it took me 5 days just to get back from Victoria to Toronto, driving 8 hours a day, just to give you an idea. So I traveled about 12,000 kilometers in a 7-week period. I had, BMO was one of our sponsors. We had a car sharing company that was the head of the organization that did car sharing in all the other cities. In Canada, and then BMO was a sponsor of it. So that was great. That was great for us. We gave them advertising. They had some signage at all of our events. some literature was distributed at the events. I made sure to mention them at the start and close of our events. But that was about it in terms of the involvement. What we did editorially is that we provide, with each city that we went to, we wrote about that city and I can't remember the initial campaign that they had, but they doubled up. They took our content that we put on our website and put it on their websites, so they had some content. So there's a bit of content exchange. So that's probably I would say our most lucrative one, because we probably got about 10 or 15 grand for that kind of sponsorship to go across the country. Yeah.
Who are your in-magazine advertisers?
Who are they? So they are agencies, real estate developers, events, arts and culture, and then there's also the city building world. So architecture firms, planning firms, the municipalities, art galleries, larger institutions, cultural institutions within the city. That tends to be. And then there's also like local shops. So there's a fair trade jewelry company that advertises with us. There's people who do Mac repair, Apple Care and stuff like that for us. So, we have a variety of those types of advertisers.
All right, before we wrap up, I just want to say, because if I say we're done, everybody's going to stand up, right? One of the things that worries Juan and I about doing these kinds of sessions with all the different ideas is that people's tendency, and you could be forgiven for it, is to go back and to go to your editor, go to your ad director and go, here, do this now, it's innovative. That stuff won't work if your company hasn't developed an innovation culture, if you haven't set up a way for people to get rewarded for taking risks. And whether you hire somebody like us or somebody from outside, don't try to do it. Don't try to do it until you've changed the culture of your company. And don't try to change the culture of your company by yourself. Because unfortunately, a prophet in his own land has absolutely no credibility. Bring somebody in from outside to help you. Bring somebody from outside to take a look at your company, talk to your employees, and build the change process. So these are all great ideas, but build the environment where they'll have a chance to succeed first. So thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you, guys. We're going to go downstairs for the end of the conference.
I have some copies of our magazine that I brought in case anyone wants to take some home. I have a couple of issues. I got a few buttons in my pocket there.
So if you'd like to look cool in Toronto tonight, thank you.
Thank you.